Shalom. This is Avram Shira from Yeshivat Nar Shalom in Jerusalem. I was asked to make a few comments about the third elections that are taking place today here in Israel. And the idea of elections is an attempt to share power. Behind this idea is the idea of creating a common will, a consensus, in order to conduct the business of government. The Torah also gives us ways to conduct the business of government. But it's not through elections, rather through appointment. Doesn't sound like democracy, does it? Appointments for office? Is the Torah not interested in our freedom, in our dignity, in our individual rights? Well, of course it is. So what is this system of appointments versus system of elections? The guidelines for such appointments are given in the Sefer Shemot, in Parshat Yitro. In the first chapter, the 26th verse begins, "You, Moses, will be a representative to God for the people." There's always one person who stands above the generation in his relationship to God. Now, people think that the prophet's job is to tell everybody what to do. But really, his job is to tell God about the situation down here. So he's a representative to God, and his job is to convey the matters to God. In other words, prayer. Prayer is the idea of saying, Hashem, we have a problem. We need to build a bridge. We need to build a dam. We need a highway. We need to know how to deal with our neighbors. So you see, the whole tone of the thing shifts when we turn our concerns into prayers. And the verses go on, "And you shall discern amongst the entire people, rich and small, old and young, men of accomplishment, God-fearing people, people of truth, people who despise money." That's a funny one in our generation. "And you shall appoint them leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. They shall judge the people at all times, and they shall bring every major matter to you." Now, there are more verses involved here, but for our purposes, we're going to keep it as simple as we can. Now, from this paragraph in the Torah, we can discern a few things. First of all, people have to have accomplishments. Well, how are we going to judge each other's accomplishments? It seems like a matrix of qualities and achievements that are going to be very difficult to weigh out unless we have a consensus of values. If we all hold that how much money you have is the deciding factor, well, then that's a consensus. And if we all hold that it's how many years you spent in yeshiva, that's another parameter of achievement. How many books you've written, how many speeches you've made, how many countries you visited, how many businesses you've owned. There's an endless number of parameters that we could consider accomplishments. But without that idea of how we judge each other's accomplishments and what are the most important, how can we possibly make appointments to the offices of government? By how big your campaign is, by how many people you got working for you, by how many phone calls they make, by how many speeches you make, by how many times you shake hands in public and don't look anybody in the eye? I don't think so. Another question, how many politicians would be willing to be leaders only of 1,000? Just 1,000, the Torah says. Now you could say, well, Abraham, that was talking about a nation of 3.5 million people. Now we have a nation of, let's say, 7 million Jews and another 1.5 million, 2 million Arabs. So altogether, like say 9, 10 million. So certainly we have a nation that's 3 times bigger than the nation that came out of Israel. Okay. So how many politicians would be willing to lead? Only 3,000 people. And then underneath them, there's leaders of 100, leaders of 50, leaders of 10. You see what the Torah is doing? It's spreading the delegation of responsibility. And by spreading this responsibility, we have that involvement that we're looking for from democracy. We have that place of voice and expression. Do we feel that today on the day of elections? Do we really feel our vote's going to count? Well, the rabbis tell us we got to vote. And certainly the politicians tell us we have to vote. My wife tells me I have to vote. That's good enough for me. But do we really feel represented? Do we feel the party's in touch with me, whatever party I vote for? But if I had a group of just 10 guys or 30 people, and we met together, 30 of us, to decide who our leader is, who's the man of accomplishment amongst 30, who is the most appropriate for the job, who's in touch with all 30 of us, then he is going to be a fitting representative. And then when he goes off to the leaders of 300 with 10 other fellows like him, that leader of 300, he's going to have a little more in touchness, if you will, with the people. And so on and so forth, up the pyramid we go. Do you see the wisdom of the Torah? Do you see the idea of delegation of responsibility and giving every person a real voice? Now, if we look at the large nation that we live in, 10 million people, how many are listening to Avram Shira? How many are listening to you, Moshe Klein and David Cohen and all the others? Go look in the phone book. There's 500 David Cohens. So, the real issue about democracy is the idea of representation that has import, it has impact, it has power. It feels real. And it's not something created by the media, and it's not something created by non-Torah political writers. Not Thomas Jefferson and not Karl Marx. And not the man who wrote the Magna Carta, and not the man who wrote, the Bill of Rights. So obviously running a government is a big deal. It's a big problem. It's a big proposition. And it's not to be handled by a little group of people on top. And at the same time, there has to be this idea of what are men of achievement? What are women of achievement? And how do we organize ourselves? By our geographics? By where I live? By my little community here? Or by my profession? Or by my religion? How do we make those groups of 100? Groups of 30? These are questions that can be answered. And, a lot of people like to talk about the theocracies of Islam and how what an abortion of rights that is, and an abuse of individual concerns that is. But that's not a true theocracy. Not the one they have in Iran, not the one they have in Saudi Arabia, or any of the Islamic states. The true theocracy is better than any democracy if you follow the Torah. At least say, well, I'm not religious. I'm not religious. I don't keep the Torah. How could you tell me how to run my government, my country? I'm not even saying be religious. I'm saying look at the wisdom of what we've been given. Try to implement the wisdom. Your religiosity is between you and your God. But the wisdom that we have in the Torah, that will give us the true spread of power, the true individual of voice, the true way of ascertaining achievements. And perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation when we can't even pick a leader. Well, maybe today they will, and maybe they won't. It'll be interesting, won't it? Everybody have a great day. Look for us on Patreon, on YouTube, at my website, avramshira.com. And we'll continue the dialogue because that's what we're here for. And let's all dialogue to Hashem and pray for the right thing to happen this day. It's an important day in Am Yisrael because we are in a redemptive process. We are in a clarification process of who we were to who we want to become. God bless all of you.